What if I told you that the same feeling of sadness could have 7 completely different explanations? And by the end of this video, you'll be able to recognize them all. Welcome back to Psych 101. I'm Desiree, and I'm really glad you're here for Lesson 2, where we dive into the big question: how do psychologists actually explain human behavior? Before we jump in, we need to talk about our friend for today's lesson, Frank. I asked you all to vote on which version of Frank you wanted to see in this series, the cute little Frank or the big mountain version, and you chose Moody Mountain Frank. So that's who we're using today as we explore the 7 major theoretical perspectives. If you want to weigh in on future polls, vote on characters, help shape examples, or guide upcoming lessons, make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss out. Today, we're breaking down 7 lenses psychologists use to understand why people think, feel, and behave as they do. And by the end of this lesson, you'll see how each psychological perspective gives us a totally different explanation for Frank's moodiness. Let's get into it. Behavioral perspective. Have you ever noticed how the sound of a notification can make you grab your phone instantly, even before you know what it is? That's your brain running a learned program. And that's exactly what the behavioral perspective focuses on: observable behavior and learned associations. You've probably heard of Pavlov and his dogs. Before the experiment, a bell was just a bell. But once Pavlov paired that bell with feeding time, the dogs began to connect the sound with food. Eventually, the bell alone made them drool. That process is called classical conditioning. This perspective, shaped by Ivan Pavlov and B.F. Skinner, says that we learn through repetition, consequences, and reinforcement. So, what does this have to do with Frank? From a behavioral lens, Frank wasn't born sad. He learned sadness. If every time he reached out for connection, he was met with rejection, that rejection acted as a negative reinforcement. Over time, withdrawing became his conditioned response. In this view, Frank's sadness is a learned pattern shaped by his environment. Now let's shift from behavior to thoughts. Think about the last time someone left you on red. Did you assume they were busy? Or did your mind immediately go, "What did I do wrong?" That instant interpretation is the heart of the cognitive perspective. This approach focuses on how we think, process information, and make judgments. Key figures such as Jean Piaget and Noam Chomsky showed us that our thoughts shape our emotional experiences. Let's apply that to Frank. He waves at someone, they don't wave back. That event is neutral. The sadness comes from the thought, "They're ignoring me." His interpretation creates the emotion. The cognitive perspective says, change the thought, change the feeling. But what if the issue isn't about learned behavior or negative thoughts? What if the answer is already inside him? The humanistic perspective offers a hopeful view. It focuses on free will, potential, self-actualization, and the idea that people aren't broken, they're blocked. Carl Rogers and Abraham Maslow believed that every person has an inner drive to grow into their best self. From this lens, Frank's sadness isn't a disorder. It's a sign that his growth is being stifled. Maybe he's lacking a sense of belonging, self-esteem, or purpose. This perspective asks, what does Frank need to thrive? Not, what's wrong with him? It's compassionate, empowering, and rooted in potential. Now we step into the deeper, darker waters of the unconscious. Have you ever had a dream so strange that you wondered where it came from? According to the psychodynamic perspective, it comes from a part of your mind that's hidden beneath awareness. Sigmund Freud argued that our behavior is driven by buried fears, unresolved conflicts, and unconscious desires. His famous iceberg model shows that only a small part of the mind is conscious, the rest is submerged. So what does this perspective say about Frank? Frank's sadness is more than a reaction. It's a symptom. It might be tied to old wounds, unresolved childhood experiences, or emotional conflicts he pushed into the background. His past is leaking into the present. Now let's talk chemistry. You know the rush you get after a great workout, or the warm, happy feeling of laughing with friends? Those sensations aren't imaginary, they're chemical. The biological perspective looks at the brain, neurotransmitters, hormones, and genetics. This view explains mental health not as a matter of being strong, but as a matter of biology. Applying this to Frank, his sadness may be linked to low serotonin, dopamine imbalance, or a genetic predisposition to depression. Maybe he inherited certain vulnerabilities. Here, the story isn't psychological, it's physiological. Now, let's zoom out into Frank's world. Have you ever noticed how you act differently with your family than with coworkers or friends? That's because we are constantly shaped by the culture around us. The sociocultural perspective highlights the role of society, norms, and social expectations. Lev Vygotsky emphasized that our development is influenced by our interactions with other people. From this viewpoint, Frank's sadness might stem from feeling out of place. Maybe he's in a culture that celebrates traits he doesn't have. Maybe he feels disconnected from the group. This perspective reminds us how powerful the environment really is. And finally, the oldest perspective of all, evolution. Why does rejection hurt so much? Why does public speaking trigger fear for so many people? The evolutionary perspective says our emotions and behaviors are shaped by the survival challenges faced by our ancestors. Charles Darwin's ideas help explain why ancient instincts still guide our choices today. For Frank, being ignored feels threatening because thousands of years ago, exclusion from the group meant danger. His sadness is an ancient survival alarm going off, wired into humans long before modern life existed. We've explored 7 different explanations for why Frank is sad. Now, let's shift to a new question. What do psychologists actually do with all of that knowledge? Let's move from theory to the real world and explore the exciting jobs that psychologists do. When you picture a psychologist, you probably imagine someone sitting in a comfy chair, listening intently, maybe saying, "And how does that make you feel?" That image is the heart of clinical psychology. This is where therapy happens. Clinical psychologists are like detectives of the mind, diagnosing and treating mental, emotional, and behavioral disorders. They use all the perspectives we just talked about to help people heal and grow. But what if you're not dealing with a major disorder, but just life? That's where counseling psychology comes in. This is a close cousin of clinical work, but it often focuses more on helping people navigate everyday challenges, relationship issues, career changes, or just feeling stuck. It's practical, supportive, and geared toward helping you thrive. How did you become the person you are today? From your first word to your first heartbreak to who you are now, that entire journey is the focus of developmental psychology. They study the incredible story of human growth and change across the entire lifespan. Ever had a teacher who just knew how to make learning fun? They might have been using principles from educational psychology. These are the architects of better learning, applying psychology to create more effective classrooms and help students succeed. And while educational psychologists design the system, school psychologists are on the front lines, working directly with students. They're the ones helping kids navigate academic struggles, emotional difficulties, and behavioral problems right there in the school building. Ever had a job that just drained the life out of you? I/O psychologists are working to fix that. They apply psychology to the workplace to improve everything from employee motivation and leadership to team dynamics and productivity. They're the secret ingredient for creating a happier and more effective workplace. We often separate mental and physical health, but health psychologists know they are two sides of the same coin. They explore the powerful connection between the mind and the body, helping people manage stress, cope with illness, and make healthier choices. If you're obsessed with crime dramas, this one's for you. Forensic psychology operates at the fascinating intersection of psychology and the legal system. They might consult on criminal cases, assess competency for trial, or bring a psychological lens to the complex world of justice. Neuropsychologists are the ultimate brain detectives. They study the intricate relationship between brain function and behavior, often working with people who have experienced brain injuries or neurological disorders to help them understand and overcome their challenges. Why do we whisper in a library but shout at a football game? Social psychologists study the powerful, often invisible ways that people influence one another. They explore conformity, persuasion, and why we act differently in a group than we do on our own. And finally, what makes you you? That's the central question of personality psychology. They focus on the stable traits and patterns that make each of us unique and how our personality helps predict our behavior. All right, you've made it through the perspectives and the subfields. Now it's time to test what you've learned. Let's jump into today's Brain Busters game and see how well you can recognize these perspectives in action. Welcome to Brain Busters, where only the sharpest minds survive. It's time to test your memory, your focus, and your Psych 101 superpowers. Here's how to play. Read or listen to each question, choose the best answer, and check your results on the very next slide. Ready? Let's go. Question 1. A psychological perspective is a theory that explains why behavior happens. A. True. B. False. Correct answer, A. True. Question 2. A clinical psychologist is a subfield, not a perspective. A. True. B. False. Correct answer, A. True. Question 3. If Frank the Sasquatch is sad because he learned responses from his environment, which perspective explains his behavior? A. Biological. B. Humanistic. C. Behavioral. Correct answer, C. Behavioral. Amazing job! Your brain is officially warmed up and in shape. Let's jump back into the lesson. Nice job! You did fantastic! Now it's time for the homework-free zone. No assignments, just reflection. Discussion question for this lesson. Why do you think Frank is sad? Which perspective made the most sense to you, and why? Share your answer in the comments. I love reading your reflections, and they help me improve each lesson. In the next lesson, we'll explore how psychologists turn ideas into actual science. Thank you so much for being here with me today. I'll see you in Lesson 3.